And it is time to jump into the rotation. Let's go to church. Marijuana in my soul, marijuana in my heart. That's how I do my best Jason Beck impression. It doesn't work that well, does it? Anyways, it's holiday season, and I got this barrage on the way over here today with all these questions about what is the best Christmas gift. Well, here in Florida, don't forget, the best Christmas gift you could possibly give somebody is not your medical prescription. Because believe it or not, with our program the way it is right now, you cannot gift anybody a chunk of that eighth that you scored last week because it belongs to you and nobody else. Just a reminder, that's the legal thing. But this is the rotation, and we're a little beyond that law. Now, California laws.
I am above the law.
I am above the law. I do want to mention that today's sale of the day is the fact that here MedMen is still getting rid of their last little scraps of inventory. And so the good news is that everything is 65% off. So how's that for deflation? And the bad news is that it is MedMen stock. So you have to deal with that.
I don't even know where can you even buy MedMen stuff. They like all their shit closed down, right?
Well, no, they had up to 10 stores at one time, and they contracted down to 6. They put back up to 7, and then after Gotham Green knocked on the door and said, "Excuse me, I think you owe us some money," they decided to go ahead and just destroy the whole thing. And so now every penny you get goes straight towards Brady Cobb's new project called Sunburn, and the MedMen is going away, and that's not a bad thing, is it, Nicole?
Well, I was going to say, if you had to be gifted something that you wanted less, would it be MedMen weed or MedMen stock?
If you
I'm not sure. It's a toss-up. I feel like at least with the penny stock, I could maybe like trade it at like one fraction of a cent. But I've definitely, there was here in California, there was a point where their debt ledger was so high that they were offering people that they owed money to stock in exchange for their debt. And I'm like, I'm not sure that that's legal, but also nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted their stock. Everyone was like, no, like I'll take the L and I'll tell you to go, pound sand before I'll take your stock in exchange for this debt. And I think, the hopes was at some point, maybe they would get bought out and some of those debts would be a part of the buyout. But I do think that they still do have a decent amount of debt on the street here in California. So no, I don't think it's a bad thing, minus the fact that, they probably have a lot of debt on the street in Florida too.
Well, our biggest debt is that we created the CEO of MedMen and sent him to California to.
Oh my gosh. He's okay. He's like, so what you expect. And I'm not trying to like be,
he makes
a jerk. I'm not trying to be a jerk to Florida, but he's exactly what you expect of like the privileged Floridian. Like he is 100% the quintessential privileged Floridian, and like it shows. When he's here, I'm like, your privileged Florida is showing, because like privileged LA might still stab you. Privileged.
Yeah. What is privileged Florida? Like I like to think of myself as privileged Florida. So like
privileged Florida is like the boat shoes,
I so had a pair of Sperry's.
The Sperry's, the full polo shirt every day with the khaki shorts. We're going to the yacht club on Sunday.
The khaki polo. What do you call it? Cargo shorts.
Yeah.
Yes, cargo shorts, exactly. And we're going to the yacht club every Sunday, and they probably go to Aspen in the winter. And that's like their regular routine since they were very little, and they don't go to Vail because it's not good enough, kind of thing. That's to me is privileged Florida.
Like Ron DeSantis sign or something like that. Yeah.
Whereas privileged LA is more like I hang out with celebrities, and I know, you know what I mean? Like it's a different vibe. It's like a more rough. Privileged LA still has a little bit more like grime to it. Privileged Florida is like, it's like real privilege. I feel like it's different.
I found a video yesterday that I sent over to Carlos of a Los Angeles City Council meeting where this dude comes up and he talks. It's a total valley speak. And
It's from that Netflix show. It's that Chad and JT
Oh,
do activism.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's like city council. These people are totally harshing on my grindage.
Yeah.
Like, and we got to do something so like our grindage doesn't get harshed.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
what really piques his froth is being on a yacht with a pre-vacay cleanse and a linen shirt open up to make his nipples get hard.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know. Every interaction that I've ever had with him, and I've had a few interactions, it was very much to the point of, who are you and what can you do for me? You know,
Yeah.
it was so transactional, and I think that this industry, you can see the difference between the people that are coming in specifically for money, because that's literally their interaction is like,
I remember when I guess we're just not gonna name him, but I remember when I first came across this guy. It was at a point in this industry where a lot of people were looking for people in suits to get into the industry, and I think he like weaseled his way in like that.
He was the original Chad of the business.
He was the original Chad of the business.
Well, I think the inability for a lot of the really brilliant people in the industry that have been I feel like a lot of people have been just beaten down by the world, to put the suit back on and walk in. I think that has actually been a huge disservice to us, because there's a lot of people that it sucks to have to, play the part, but when it comes to politics, you do. And we have plenty of people that we could not to be a jerk or anything, but like shave the beard and cut the dreadlocks and put them in a two-piece. And but I'm saying we've resisted really hard. And so then people like him show up and are willing to hang out with us, and they get the job.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen quite a bit. I should also back up for just a second and introduce ourselves, because I got ahead of myself by putting.
This is an interesting show. I felt like we were just gonna talk shit for an hour.
It's a vibe, but there's a method to my madness, or just madness to my method.
Yeah,
one of the way. Anyways, my name is Gary Stein. I'm your political director for Suncoast Normal here in the state of Florida, and the master of public health of our trio. To my right, your left, is Carlos Angel. See, I had to wait for that, so I go ahead and finish your damn name. Jose Angel Hermida, who is our deputy director and master of business administration, and also the proprietor of Chillum Mushroom and CBD Gallery over here in Ybor City, one of the only mushroom places that we have here in Florida at this point in time, right?
They're popping up. There's more places that are starting to brand like I brand, but that's definitely one of the first people to do things this way, I guess you'd say.
And Chris Cano, our third, our executive director,
not here.
No, he was heading towards Art Basel and made a left and ended up in New York. I think that's what happened. That's why you cannot drive stoned, because you never know where you're going to end up. But you'll get there safely. I can guarantee it. That's one thing we have to worry about. And of course, our guest today is the high priestess of cannabis, Nicole West, coming out to us from California. Now, Nicole, I was looking at your resume. It's awfully long. You have been a serial entrepreneur in so many businesses, and I have to ask you, why can't you hold a job?
Well, I would say my first statement to that is, why aren't there more jobs worth having in this industry?
There you go.
And in real life, I've taken job after job with the reality of a pulse and a paycheck for probably the first 5 to 6 years in this industry, because there wasn't necessarily the ability to be choosy about what job you took. So early on, I took what jobs I could get in a world that things were constantly getting shut down and overturned and failure after failure. For instance, the beginning of my career was me trying to get into the industry through a partnership, because I was in the real estate market before the economy crashed, and I ended up in cannabis because I didn't know what to do with my real estate. career. And so my original, existence in the industry, I got a license in the city of Long Beach, and we were shut down by the Supreme Court of California because of 3 portions of the ordinance being unconstitutional. So my first entry into the industry was a 9-month-long stint of being an owner before the Supreme Court shut me down. So I've had just kind of like a routine of get behind the curtain, and you realize it's a little old man cranking a wheel and not, a real great and powerful Oz, and you dip, because there seems to always be either, some fat Tony that we owe $1 million to, or some other version of like leveraged debt that, maybe it's not your cousin, but maybe it's someone else. And at a certain point, I'm trying to make sure that I find an opportunity that I can really, really build with. I found a couple opportunities over my career that I thought I was going to be able to do that. And I kind of treat cannabis like a committed relationship. My industry passion and my love has to stay passionate and loving, or I'm not going to be as good at my job as I am. And over the past 5 years, I've really just taken contracts because I've come to such a level of jadedness of the industry that I refuse to commit to anyone. And so I just take contracts now. This job that I have right now is actually the first job that I've taken in almost 5 years. Yeah, since 2017, since I've been back in California. Every other thing that you see on my resume since 2017, those have all been contracts, 6 months to a year. And that's because that's all you can get me to promise you I'll want to stay. And mostly it's because by the end of that, I know I can promise you that I'll make the place better. I can promise you that I'll make it more efficient, but I can't promise you that I'll want to be there anymore. And I have to be real with my clients and people I work with and say that. And I have to be very conscious of the fact that they understand that they're hiring me to sort through the chaos, right? Like my job is to like make it be less chaotic. And if I can do that, and I can usually do that in 6 months to a year, at the very least, my promise is I can save you 15 to 20% on your operational costs just by my existence in your company within a year. And I've never failed at that, ever. So I come in, I save some money, I do some better training, I make sure that we can organize better, I make sure that the process flows are good, and I move on with my life. I am hoping that the current job that I have now could be kind of like a career that I stay with for a long time. They have a lot of opportunity for big growth, and real life, they're the first ones to be smart enough to offer me the C-suite position rather than put me as the vice president beside some dumbass president,
Yeah.
Which happens from time to time. It's amazing how sometimes the vice president is the one who shores up the president, the CEO, and the COO, and the CVO. It just happens because that's where the talent lies. Oftentimes, people going up. Now, I got to tell you, our view of California, since we decided to go ahead and trash on Florida earlier, was the fact that
California is easy to trash on.
Well, a friend of mine once said that if you want to be successful in California, you can look at the laws, but be willing to strap on the orange at any time.
Yeah.
And hopefully not the blue, which means basically you'd be willing to let the feds take care of your housing for a while.
Well, I mean, that happened to me in Colorado. So that's true really anywhere if you want to have that conversation. It's not just California. California just has gotten a little bit more I'd say loose around the idea because they've been doing it in this market. I'd say commercially, illegally for 30 years in California, so there's just a lot of ingrained bad habits. But I mean, I went to jail because we were pressed and I was going to be potentially pushed into a federal court situation in Colorado. So it's not unique to California, but you are right. California definitely is a little flagrant.
Yeah, well, this is the way I've always seen California laws being made, obviously it's bad, but not as bad as Florida. But I'll get to that in a moment. Basically, some guy with some golden teacher on hand writes a law, and then it's brilliant. Hands it over to the legislators and the lobbyists, who put it in a ninja bullet, and they blend it as much as they can and make it look like they want it to be. And they put it out there, they implement it, and the judges clean up the mess. And then a guy comes in with Birkenstocks and writes a white paper on what lessons we've learned, and let's start again. And it's usually got 4 or 5 year cycle. Is that about fair?
That's pretty fair. That's pretty fair. And honestly, don't forget that somewhere in the middle of that, a couple corporations roll in and figure out how they can properly manipulate the law so that it can advantage the epic amount of real estate that they own. Because there's always, everything in California has a real estate play on the back end. It doesn't matter what it is. It does not matter what it is. And it's because California real estate is so expensive. And some of these bigger corporations are, obviously heavily invested in acreages of different things that we can grow, because we are the agricultural capital of the United States. No offense to Florida, but we are pumping out the produce here. And so I mean, I feel like we've got
you guys got better oranges.
I feel like we've got an orange beef, there's an orange beef between the two. But I would say the real estate
it was one of the biggest arguments for the hemp industry here was how horrible our orange industry is doing, and how planting fields of hemp could possibly replenish the soil that causes all the citrus greening and all that.
Yep, absolutely.
The citrus greening came from fruit that was brought in from out of state. That is the drawbacks to go ahead and having interstate commerce when you don't handle the little things like viruses, bugs, and molds that you bring over. Speaking of the clones that we tend to get from somewhere, that they come with powdery mildew.
I mean, everything comes with powdery mildew. You have to be more concerned about the viroid. Yeah, the hopslatin viroid took over California. There was a couple nurseries that had it and were cloning it and selling massive amounts of clones. And I guess there was hundreds of thousands of hopslatin viroid clones sold throughout the state of California. And viroid is no joke. It's epically contagious. And watching the market try to rebound from that, I think was really interesting, because it shows you how unprepared we are for being proactive with the maintenance of our gardens out here. Even though we are such an ag state, I think cannabis is still being treated in a lot of situations. There are some that they're actually treating it with real testing and paying attention beforehand, because what normally happens now is that people just throw all the plants in and they're watching them grow and they're holy crap. Now people are starting to realize we bought all these clones. Let's hold them and let's check on them and let's test them and let's spend the $600 to make sure that this is safe. And instead of just throwing 2,000 clones that you just bought from Joe Schmo who has a license. And some of these companies, I'm who even are these people? Do you even?
Well, I mean, I had a discussion with Boris from Curaleaf not too long ago. And his whole situation is that he believes that nobody should have home grow because the MSOs have to go through a testing policy and things of that sort that people who are growing it by themselves don't have to do. And so therefore, he feels that they don't deserve to have home grow because they're not putting in the effort to go ahead and get their product tested.
Do you not deserve to grow your own tomatoes?
That's just the way it is, because you can get tomato rot.
Right? I don't want you to grow your own broccoli, because that's not and broccoli can be really gross if you're not careful, because all the little spots that things can hide in. You can have so many bugs and so much mold.
Coming out of broccoli and shit. Yeah.
Yeah, broccoli can be really dangerous if you're if you're not careful.
That's why I stay away from vegetables. I'm a vegetarian.
The idea that you can't do it for yourself is asinine. The idea that people often abuse systems is not asinine. And so if his argument wanted to be, we're afraid to give them the ability to home grow their 6 plants because all of a sudden there's going to be 60, that argument, I would say, all right, I'm going to listen. But the argument that human beings should not have the independent autonomy to grow their own anything to consume for themselves is the most asinine statement I've heard in a long time.
Well, I've heard even more asinine, but that one was way up there. it kind of makes you scratch your head and just say, how can he possibly think that? And we are trying to get home grow here in the state of Florida. Of course, what one group is trying to do it by way of ballot initiative, and unfortunately, we've created systems here in Florida that make ballot initiatives nearly impossible to pass anymore. Coming from citizens, you guys got the whole prop system, and it's always been a wild one as far as I can see from here.
Oh
But
yeah.
over here, in order to have any law passed, you have to collect petitions. And just to get Supreme Court judicial review, you have to have nearly 90,000 petitions signed and verified, which is a long haul unless you've got several $1 million on hand. And then after that, you've got to get a total of 891,000 uh, signed petitions and verified petitions before it can hit the ballot. And then after that, of course, you have to win by 60%. And of course, they make a situation where you have to turn in those ballots within 24 hours, 48 hours after the sign. Otherwise, they go bad. So everything they could possibly do to make a ballot initiative look unappealing anymore, so that only legislators can actually put in ballot initiatives. They've done over here.
I feel like you are one of the few people that I've met in Florida. Honestly, this is the truth, Derry, that I've met in Florida that's doing something genuinely regularly every single day in the political world for cannabis with in Florida, as well as actually like comes and hangs out with us riffraff.
Well, I really enjoyed hanging out with you, riffraff, when we were over at Kushcon. That was it was a lot of fun. It was a good break from from the melee, and it was an interesting conference. Beside, a lot of interesting and friendly vendors there that actually cared about their product, which was kind of nice. It's something we don't always see. And there are still legacy folks out there of two types. One is the one that puts all the love into their product, and you can tell it, and you can taste it, and you can feel it. And then you have the other guys who are just basically willing to cut any corners, get whatever cheap Eagle 20 off the market to keep their crops looking good, or soak them so far with neem oil you throw up just looking at it. And so we have to be careful about our black market over here. Although from what I can tell, we get California black and gray market stuff over here all the time, just absolutely flooding the streets.
I would imagine that the California illicit market gets there, but I would also imagine that some of the California regulated market also makes it to you as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, some of them say Prop 64, some of them say Prop 214, and you have to kind of figure out exactly at that point how old is the packaging. Doesn't necessarily say how old the product is.
I also feel there's like a little bit like, if you're in the legacy market and you want to like put more value behind your product, like having a bag that has that California THC thing on there is probably going to be a good way to go ahead and get a little extra value, charge a little bit extra money.
Oh yeah, and if you go on like Alibaba or whatever, you can see it. They're like, selling people's. I can't even imagine being, if you were like Cookie's IP attorney, going on there, going on the websites every day and be like, oh my god, because they're just making all the different. I saw. I live in LA, so I was in downtown LA and I went into this liquor store and they had like a basket of like random things, and one of the things that was in there was a rubber band bound stack of Cookies eighth bags, just the bags, no weed in them, but you at the this little liquor store, bags, huh? You could buy Mylar bags. Like it was like probably a 50 pack. You know what I mean?
So why, I own this place, Chillum, as we've said many times during this show. And when I go out to these cash and carry distributors,
1714 7th Avenue in Ybor City,
in the heart of Ybor City.
I have to give you a commercial.
Mushrooms, hemp.
I think I covered the story of your opening of your store. Oh,
really?
Opening. Yeah, because you were the first one, right?
Yeah, well, the first one to it's not like I'm the first one to sell Amanita muscaria.
No, but like at a store in Florida, and to be like, hey, I'm here. This is what I'm doing.
yeah. So it's really all branding purposes, really. So I'm the first one to say, hey, I'm really focusing on shrooms, guys. It's a mushroom dispensary. Check out all the mushroom stuff we got. But I do sell a lot of like glass and like pipes and whatnot. And when I go to these like local cash and carry distributors, you better believe there's stacks and stacks of bags that say CA, with a little
Yeah.
leaf on it and fucking exclamation mark.
Yeah.
Like we're encouraged to sell those bags in our store because there's a demand from dealers to sell it.
I mean, they're always saying they are worried about products getting out of the realm of the vertically integrated folks and being sold on the street. Well, we get so much from California, and some of it, like I said, it's just a matter of buying the packaging. Sometimes it's the actual product itself, which may be sometimes even years old, but you never know. And I think one of the problems we had with our vaping crisis was that distribution of packaging, in part by Alibaba, that allowed everybody to think that they had safe product on the market, but there's people just mixing it in their bathtubs.
Exactly. No, and honestly, I'm a little concerned for people's ability to even battle and protect their own IP, because there's no, like, what are you going to do? Send a cease and desist to the trap? Like,
Yeah.
We had Art Basel this last weekend.
I feel like, oh, right. You just like roll around in Art Basel and like cease and desist, cease and desist. Cease and desist.
Yeah, they had a separate thing called Terp Basel, which was I heard was a trap fest. Everybody had a backpack full of Mylar bags.
You're
That
kind of
makes sense.
stretching right now, Gary.
I didn't. I'm not going to mention any names because
No, but I mean,
No,
I feel like the IP is going to be a really interesting part of this next wave of brands as they come through, and like, I'm curious to see how a lot of these brands really protect themselves, because the idea is to be able, and everyone gets mad and like talks all the crap about these, the big MSOs. The idea of MSO just means that you're in multiple states and you're operating in multiple states, right? Like, that's the American dream. Like, we need to stop like completely crapping down the throats of the MSO idea. We have to make sure that they stay in line with what the industry is, and that's what we can talk about, how they're not, what they're not doing. But I think the idea of these MSOs being able to properly protect their IP from the illicit market is going to be, I mean, again, what are you going to do? You have no idea for the most part where this is coming from. It's not like a normal copyright issue, right? Like a normal copyright issue, you like Google them and you're like, oh, this is their business address. And then you're like, okay, send it here. And then you send the information to your lawyer and you're like, look what I saw. Or maybe you have an IP attorney that's like, look what I saw. But like in that world, when we are talking about insurances and products liability and the level of ignorance in the cannabis industry, I think there's going to be some really interesting turn of events that are going to be happening in the near future, with people having to have authenticity stuff to show it's authentic on the package. Like, because I don't know what else they're going to do.
I think we're going to see a huge change in the branding of MSOs. It's interesting to see you kind of bring that up, because I was just thinking about it. Like, I mean, there is definitely like MSOs are looked down upon, honestly, because like so far there's a majority of them. I mean, we can stereotype at this point.
Yes, 100%. 100%. I'm not saying that correlation's not causation.
Here's the thing. I mean, a lot of these MSOs are looking to advance the industry, and I do feel that pretty soon it's going to be hard to kind of like look at all of them and be like, no, devil, because pretty soon we're going to see these MSOs lobbying to advance things and lobbying to get home grow and open the industry and things like that.
Are you telling me that lobbyists actually control our industry?
Everything.
Are you that stance? Because you're talking about how California laws are made. That part about the corporations going in there and readjusting things to their own profit. Yeah. That happens first. That's where a law starts. Like a lobbyist goes to a legislator and says, "I'd like to donate to your children and orphans fund, or possibly your PAC, and here's the bill I want you to pass." and that's where it starts. And of course, the lobbyist has certain people that will fit into that industry. I mean, I'm not going to knock down Nevada too much, but looking to see who won the lotteries this last week for the consumption lounges. Some of the people who won, I think, are a little on the suspicious side in regards to the amount of activity that they did to create the rules.
Okay, yeah. All
But
right. I see how this could be a touchy
I think
subject
that's
for
the
you,
case
Gary.
everywhere. I think that's the case everywhere, though, Gary. Like,
it's just a microcosm, not just
it's
this.
the case everywhere in almost every state that I've seen have any sort of lottery for sure. But even the merit-based ones, depending on
That
what
merit-based ones are the shadiest.
merit-based, depending on what review company they hire, you can see a trend, as to who the winners are. And I'm not saying that it's fixed, but it's fixed.
As long as we're still sticking on a system where you have to have state laws prevail, and
Right.
the state legislatures are like the meth lab of democracy. They will do anything outrageous to go ahead and start their own laws, and that's been the basic issue. If we had some group of laws that were contiguous over at least a group of states, we have a better chance of controlling the market. I mean, and it's actually easier for vertically integrated multi-state organizations to be able to handle the situation when they are truly multi-state and they don't have to worry about interstate commerce and things of that sort. I mean, face it, Nabisco is a multi-state organization that puts out product across the country, and you never get boof Cheez-Its, right?
Right. No, exactly. It's always the same. It's always consistent. And I've been literally screaming a specific statement for a long time, and it's deschedule or bust, because like everyone having any other conversation about like the next wave of what has to happen, unless you're in a state like maybe Florida or one that doesn't have weed at all, we need to be working on federal legalization, because that's going to be like a full deschedule is the only option for what we need to do next. Because and I know a lot of people want to like hate on me for this, but I honestly think that giving alcohol ATF the ability to regulate us will be more fun than the FDA or any of the other alphabet boys. So if I and I have a background in tobacco, disclaimer, my first like big kid job, I worked for RJ Reynolds. And why didn't I stay there, Gary? Because I watched people die. It was a great job. It was a great job, but finding out that, how evil working for tobacco felt, it really was all it was cracked out to be.
In the state of Florida, when I first got here back in 2007, I was actually in charge of the tobacco control and prevention program for Hillsborough County. And I couldn't help noticing that my retirement package was heavily invested in Altria
Yeah.
and RJ Reynolds and all that bit. And I'm saying, how could you give me money to do my job and be paying the tobacco companies that I'm fighting as
part of your pension?
That seems to me to be a bit of a paradox.
100%. And but at the same time, I'm very conscious of the fact, like, here's the thing. I know cannabis heals. I know cannabis is a medicine. But the market that is something that's going to really and I know the idea that it is a medicine is going to work better for some people in changing their minds. But at a certain point, when the masses are able to consume it at like a level of, in my mind, harm reduction of a lot of things too, because if we allow cannabis to exist, a lot of the other drugs, I think people won't be as prone to end up going, because cannabis isn't a gateway drug. I don't care what anybody says about that. Like, it's just not. It's not like I smoked weed and now I want to smoke crack. Like, that's never happened in the history of ever. There might be some shady person that like offered you crack, and because you were high, like maybe you considered it. You're around some weird people. Like, that is a different conversation. It's not like, oh, this is where I am and this is where I need to go. No. So for that reason, I think giving
It's
the
like,
idea
I smoked weed and now I'm gay.
yeah, never.
I
And so
smoked
like,
weed and now I'm on crack.
yeah, that's
Oh my god!
But
my point is if you give it to the ATF, I think, or the ability for it to be something that is looked at to be equal to alcohol, like, I don't think that we'll have as hard of a time being able to get access to it everywhere. is my point. Like, and it just being everywhere. And then the market will genuinely be able to have, like, there is good tobacco. Like, there are still good cigars, and you still can get the headiest of the tobaccos. Like, that does exist. Most of it is booth tobacco, but that's what most of the market
There's actually a
wants.
cigar festival going on.
Yeah. And I also think that the beverage industry will go towards the alcohol way of regulating, right? Makes sense, because cannabis beverages are going to be a thing. I don't care what anybody says. It's not now. It hasn't happened yet, but it will be very soon. And so alcohol will take the drinks, and the health department will take the food, and tobacco will take all the smokable things. And then we'll all just be able to get high and chill. And then there will still be heady, like, high-end versions of places that people can go to and get, like, the best of the best, because that's, like, the specific tobacco they have to buy for their shaman retreat. You know, that place still sells stuff. You know what I mean? That place still makes money. There's not as many of them, but there's not as many of us that want to smoke that kind of fucking weed or that kind of tobacco either.
Yeah,
that's right. I mean, some of us are connoisseurs, and some of us will smoke whatever
I like what
comes
you're
around.
saying, Nicole.
Like when I was in college and we ran out of stuff, we went to the local stores and started checking out the catnip and said, this could possibly work.
I just think that it'll help get access everywhere. And that's one of the things that's going to allow for the market to really figure itself out quickly. Because if we can have it everywhere, there will be an ability the Nestle doesn't want to buy the, like, most high-end, like, crazy chocolate that they only make, like, the smallest batches, and that's all they can make, but they make really good money, and they can never do more than that. Nestle doesn't want that company. They'll let those people be rich off their little chocolates in their family business and stay there forever. That's what you want to be.
Well, Nestle's is also draining all of our springs over here.
I understand that, but I'm saying is, like, there's still a place where you can make good money off of chocolate and not be a business that's going to end up having to sell out to Nestle.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we talk about interstate commerce and about the legalization nationwide. The midterms had some very interesting results countrywide. I know that there was a lot of changing of the guard over in California, and as far as state seats, and I think even some congressional seats. And overall, do you see that this last midterms has brought us closer to a quandary as far as legalization is concerned, or farther away?
Honestly, I think I have rose-colored glasses in a way that I grew up in California. So seeing being legal for as long as we have been, and some form of legalization, since 1996, that we've been, I think every day in California, we're closer. And I think the sooner California's market can kind of figure itself and its stuff out, the sooner the nation has a chance to be able to actually deschedule this plant, and I think that California has a really, really heavy weight on its shoulders for that reason. But I also think that there are still enough people here like me who haven't completely lost their spark for this industry that are going to keep pushing until we either die or it happens, and I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, which is we need to be really pushing on all of our legislators about federal legalization, deschedule this plant, like deschedule or bust. Like that is our only next option, because
I'm sorry. I think I'm cutting you off here, but I'm excited to ask you this next question. Have you heard over on the West Coast, speaking of the whole mushroom thing, right? There's this place in Oregon that has apparently just up and decided to start selling psilocybin without any laws or regulatory framework. They just started doing it. Right? Have you heard about them?
Well, there is laws there, and the regulatory stuff starts next year.
Yeah, they
started before. They were supposed to.
They started before. So the idea now is like, okay, when are these guys going to get shut down? Type thing.
I feel like.
What do you think about people doing that?
I mean, I think that the industries that we're in are habitual line steppers, and we have to be like just hitting that boundary every time just to see. And unfortunately, sometimes for instance, my company. Okay. So the company I used to work for, Sweet Leaf, we ran our store to allow people to come back. We didn't like keep record that you bought an ounce as an adult. So you were allowed to come back because the laws were literally regulate like alcohol was what the regulations came to in California. And so we went through this whole process. We asked our legal team, everything. We were like, it says 1 ounce per transaction. It didn't say anything about you can only have so many transactions per day. It didn't say you can only come 1 time per day. It had nothing. It said 1 ounce per transaction. The alcohol regulations for buying an open container say 1 container or 1 drink per transaction. And so you can buy 1 drink, drink it, and buy another one. So like for yourself, like 1 per person, right? That you can't walk off with like 4 beers in the regulations of buying open containers, right? So we assumed people could come back because our lawyer said, yes, people can come back. Obviously, some people are going to abuse any system of any type that you put up. There's no way around that, right? It is what it is. Human beings are fucking trash. Somebody will find a way to abuse the system. And at the end of the day, there's also medical patients who are now able to afford adult use product because there was way more adult use product on the market, and the medical market was actually getting more expensive. So now we have the ability to help people. People can come back, whatever. Tire investigation happens for a year because they think that we're trapping, because customers are coming back and buying more than 1 ounce.
Yeah.
People were running whatever business they wanted to run off of this whole industry is some version of middlemaning, right? Like everyone's middlemaning something from somewhere to someone. Like there's like 900 middlemen between you and that bag of weed for the most part, not always, but for you.
Work for ease too, I think.
Right. So the state said that's not the spirit of the law. Right. And so the spirit of the law was 1 ounce per day. And it's like, but nowhere in the law does it say the spirit. Does it say that follow the spirit? It didn't say to follow the Holy Ghost either. I wasn't sure what they actually meant by the spirit of the law at the point of getting this investigation brought to a full raid. They take down all the shops. And now we're in grand jury trial for a year. And all over the fact that we push this line because we were like, it doesn't say how many times, like, cool, whatever. Like, and our lawyer said it was good. And we handed out these little notes being like, bro, you're not supposed to have more than 1 ounce on your person because it was a possession limit without the card. And so, but like, I don't know, I can smoke 1 ounce in a day. I would have to try real hard, but I could smoke 1 ounce in a day. And me and like a couple of
Nicole. Let's do this. Let's smoke 1 ounce in a day.
All right. Now, if you're carrying your stuff around in a little red wagon behind you, is it considered on your person?
I don't know. Is that your wagon, or is it battery powered and nobody knows who it belongs to?
That is basically the way our federal government works.
Yeah.
But I just want to confirm what you're saying, Nicole, because like this is why California, as you're saying, is leading the charge, and why Florida is just fumbling around down here. Because I mean, you guys have a bunch of habitual line steppers out there. You guys understand that if a law is unjust, you got to break it, and you have a responsibility to.
Now, the Cole memo said we had to have a robust, regulatory system in place, and people are still clinging to that, even though that little Keebler elf made that whole thing go away. But
some people were saying that my case, because that case was happening, and then they got rid of the Cole memo. And some people have conspiracy theory that I've seen on some blogs that my case made the Cole memo go away. And I was like, that's insane. I don't know that we had that kind of power. But also, I did hear that Jeff Sessions saw my case on his desk.
Wow. So that is cool. That is actually cool.
Wow.
I don't get along with Pete or the other or Jeff. I don't know whether it's the Sessions word or not, but that's a bad family.
Yeah.
But what we always see that the more regulation there is, the more breaking of the law there is. Because number one, you're dealing with a group of people that are highly into what I call salivating, which means when you got a good sativa, you sit there and you wait till the ideas come across, and you can find a way to break or hack any law if you think hard enough. and that is basically what they do. What they do in California is they figure out, oh, I see. Well, this 14-page law, it skipped a comma right there, and I could insert my idea in there, and therefore
100%
make it legal.
100%. And at the end of the day, that's all 3 of us. 3 of the 4 of us. The there was 3 owners and myself. We're all from California, and we were all from the market of the evolution of California. And we're over here in Colorado, and Colorado doesn't think that way. And we just rolled in and we were like, this is what we're going to do. And they had to change a bunch of laws once this whole case happened, because it wasn't in the law. And so now the law has this like weird extra clause that basically gives the onus to the bud tender, which is insane, because it's like, oh, you're going to give the onus to a $16 an hour employee to be responsible for like all this, like whether or not the customer had come back is the responsibility of the bud tender to have knowingly served that person before. I'm like, holy shit, you want a bunch of stoners to remember if somebody came in 2 hours ago?
Okay. By the way, you hear that, True Leave? $16 an hour is supposed to be the bottom, not the top. Okay. I'm just
That's
saying.
the very entry. Yeah. 16 to 18, depending on where you are. Should be
what's the minimum wage in California?
$15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here,
But so,
here
like,
it's $11.50.
okay.
No, at least it's
Yeah.
$9.75 still.
No, it's gone up like $2
Oh,
because
boy.
of that John Morgan law.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that is incremental.
Uh-huh.
It's going to take up until like 2026 till I get $15. So
I gave everybody a raise this past November because of that law.
yeah, and a free payroll.
And I think our minimum wage goes up in January too. So I think it'll probably be, you know, a 17 to 19 reality. And like, I think starting people at an entry level wage and giving them like a 90-day stage to getting a better wage is the way for me to find the most success in like bringing people into the dispensary. And also I really like to bring people in at opportunity where they're very interested, because both of those two things, where if you have the ability to be like, oh, do you like plants or people? And people like immediately say plants, we're like, okay, we need to get you into the grow. Like, please don't try to interact with people on our sales floor if you definitely prefer plants.
Now, here's a question I have to ask you, because this is something I've been beating my head against here in the state of Florida, where we have a medical only program, and yet we have bud tenders behind the counter, which are basically called counter associates, because they have no real concept of what the hell they're selling or what it actually does, with all due respect. And so I asked them to certify bud tenders so they understand the plant, so they understand the endocannabinoid system. So if somebody comes in with a migraine, they don't just go ahead and throw a sativa at them and say, have a good time.
So that's the reason why we have to get this scheduled, because financially that's not realistic, Gary. And as business owners, for them to go through all of that to make sure that everybody's like a fucking genius about it. No, like most, and at the end of the day, that's the reason why we need to be able to kind of allow there to be a high end and like give that to herbalists. Send this to literally a place that the lady that sells the like ashwagandha and the fucking the rose hips and all the other things and will make you some like turmeric tea. That lady needs to be able to sell you your cannabis. And then the kids that are selling, and I say kids lightly because they're not children, we're not having children, but like the 23-year-olds that are selling you your pot should be like the fucking liquor store attendants that are like, oh yeah, this one's sick, and like this one's popular, and like this one's dank, man, and like I saw this on the fucking internet, you know, like those are all relevant things to the adult use world, which let's be, you know, very conscious of the fact that I think this is an adult use product that people are using to self-medicate. Like I think it's both. I think it's a double. And so if you're going in to have like a real conversation to be like, I need help, that's a different place than the place that goes and picks up an 18-pack. You know what I mean?
We have people who have to go to the doctor to get themselves a recommendation so they can use their medical card. And they get plenty of good education for the most part in a lot of these doctors' offices.
Yeah.
That said, the medical information stops right there, you know, dead stop, full stop. And if they need any help once they get to the dispensary or MMTC, whatever, they're not going to get it there. I mean,
I've always thought there should be like a call center that you can use, because I think that would be the most financially responsible way to like at every dispensary have like a couple little phone booths, and you could like get on a phone and it would go to a medical call center, and that person could like look at the menu and be like a normal person that could service like all of Florida. You know what I mean? And you could have a couple people that got paid nonstop to just be there. And you could walk in, as long as you were in the store, pick up a phone and be like, this is the menu. This is what I need. And I think that because you are under the full guise of medical only. And if, you know, and I only say this because they're all MSO giant companies that are kind of, they can afford to do this. I mean, I guess they can't because they're all hemorrhaging money. Real life, they can't afford to do this, but they should. And then pay like 2 people between like the whole regulated market to be able to just be 20 or not 24 hours, whatever your guys' hours are, on call to answer any questions, because it's not financially feasible to have somebody at a dispensary, for the most part, that is that level of education that you actually deserve, because you actually deserve somebody who is like able to answer real medical questions in that situation, not some bud tender who's gone through like, no, like you deserve like much better than that on a medical conversation. I literally spend so much of my time training bud tenders. Do not answer any medical questions. This is for real. I'm like, don't, if they ask you, if they say that they're pregnant, you need to tell them they need to consult their doctor. Those are the exact words you say. Consult your doctor. I'm not allowed to talk to you about this. If they say they want to give it to a child, you say, make sure that you consult your doctor. I'm not allowed to talk to you about this. Like literally, like do not give any medical advice is what I tell every bud tender that I train. And a lot of these stores are medical stores also. People are coming in with their medical recommendation, but I'm like, do not give these people medical advice. Tell them to talk to their doctor, because I think it is one of the most liable situations that you could give an entry-level employee, an entry-level sales employee to be responsible for. Gam's heart. Are you kidding me? No.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I went to a store not too long ago. I already told this story online a couple of weeks ago, but there's a woman who came in behind me on a cane, come up there and tells me she has this terrible fibromyalgia. She can't sleep at night. And she's asking, what is the best strain for her to use? I can't. Okay.
Says I'm so high.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Anyways, so the woman said, I have this terrible fibromyalgia. I can't sleep at night. What strain is best for that? And the guy looks at her and says, this strain, man, it will really fuck you up. Okay. That's
not what I asked at all. That was not even the question, young man.
That is exactly what she said. She said, that wasn't the question I asked. I wanted to know.
I already know.
Yeah, what can reduce the pain that will let me sleep at night? I'm not asking about which one will fuck me up. I can fuck myself up any way I want to, anytime. Yeah. That's not my goal here. And I felt bad for her. And so I stepped in and I took her aside and I talked to her about a couple of different indica strains that work best for fibromyalgia, just from my own knowledge base, which I'm sure reduce the liability base over at that particular MNTC. Although their stuff was boof anyway, but that's besides the point. I mean, sometimes the generic pills are just
Nicole brings
sugar
up
jabs.
a very, very important part to what you're saying, though. It's like these kids are you can't have that in a dispensary. You can't get everybody. Yeah, you can't get everybody on your staff trained to that level of a medical doctorate.
All right, so you would support a bill that would allow every MMTC to have a doc in the box kind of telehealth room where they could walk in and ask a medical question in order to complete their sale.
That's 100% what I think the most financially responsible decision for any state that has a medical program across the nation. Every state should have this, and it should be a amount of actual patients per like community of how many of these human beings need to be able to answer phone calls. And like yes, 100%, because people deserve that. They deserve
better solution than what I thought. Like I thought maybe like the place could have like a sommelier where like there's one person there, but that's still not realistic, is it? No. Like you need to have one person for multiple locations.
I love that sommelier. It's like the guy has a cigarette holder dangling on a golden chain off of his neck.
Well, and here's the thing: is the really cool places will, and like just like really nice restaurants do. you know, and like that's the difference. That's the difference maker, is that like we're like, no, we've got our own doctor, like we've got our own person. Go talk to our person. Like, you don't need to get on the phone. Like, we have the phone because we have to have the phone, but like, come here. Like, we've got this person. You can have a private consult, and like that experience is the thing that's going to make the difference from the 15% of the market that's going to want that, and the 85% of the market that just wants to buy some fucking weed and go home.
Well, then I guess I have to do my due diligence tonight and get together a bill before the legislative delegations kick off in the next week or two.
Because I think that would be not that expensive for the stores. And when these stores have so many locations like they do in Florida, it's like, oh, you'll have one person for all 50 of your stores. And so they can be at your corporate office and they can work for you. And they just have to be this level of intelligent, you know, education. And that way you can have somebody that's like able to answer real medical conversations. I feel like maybe even like a pharmacist and a nurse being able to have access to both a pharmacist and a nurse would be, to me, good, because like drug complications is a really big conversation that you need to have, because weed is cool and like doesn't kill people, but drug interactions can. And that's different than weed killing people. So I want like to be able to have like a real conversation about your other pills, and you should not be having that conversation with a bartender. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. But like, let me tell you all the drugs I take. Is that a problem? Like,
we have a lot of retirees who has Dr. Garrett calls them PD1s. You know?
They probably have a list. There's like, here's the 97 pills. They need to be able to say, hey, I need you to go home, write down all of your medicines, and then come back to me and tell me every medicine that you have. And like, maybe they'll have a special line, or like, you can call me on this line and I'll answer the rest of the questions. You call them and you tell them your pills, because that's a real conversation to have. And I've never met I'm one of the more well-versed people in weed that I know, and I have zero concept of what drugs you can and can't take with smoking or taking, you know, because it's different. Cannabis isn't the problem sometimes. It might be just like inhaling, smoking something. Like certain conversations are worth having that we can't have without real medical.
They exist though. They really do. The CBD program here, when it first like kicked off, I remember I worked for a guy that wanted to use my brain to like try and get into this FMA medical class. And I'm like, I'm not a doctor, dude. But he's like, write the class. It doesn't matter. And, and you know, I took it very seriously. I did some really great research, and I definitely found drug interactions. And I definitely found like, I mean, you don't want to take things that impede your blood flow when you're taking THC. You don't want to take things that impede your immune system when you're taking CBD. There's a number of interactions that you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and it's such a personal conversation, and medical, like a protected conversation to be having about your pharmaceutical choices, and also, you know, to be able to have like a legally protected conversation as far as HIPAA is concerned about potentially doing other things. You know what I mean? Like, if you do other drugs that aren't on the list of your medications or whatever, you also should be able to talk to this medical person. You know what I mean? And say all of those things when you're like, so will this help? And then like, okay, well, here's a professional that we need you to talk to. Like, rather than just sending somebody like, oh yeah, let's just get them super high off of these dabs because that's a great idea. You know, like,
I love dabs, and that's always a great idea, but maybe not in that situation.
Yeah.
But Nicole, we're running to the end of the show here. I want you to take some time here and go ahead and talk to our viewers and let them know again who you are real quick and how they can find you, how they can support you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me. I hope that I get to join you guys on some more amazing adventures. My name is Nicole West, and I'm currently the COO at Butter Modern Cannabis. And I've just been a trailblazer in this industry, I'd say, for almost 14 years now. from marketing to building businesses to scaling cultivations, just kind of have my heart and my head planted in this industry, so to speak. So very thankful to be able to keep working with amazing minds like your own and keeping the conversation going on genuinely descheduling this plant, because that's my mission at this point. 2.0 cannabis regulation, deschedule or bust.
Okay, quick question. Should the SAFE Act pass before the MORE Act?
Safe banking plus.
Safe banking, yes, because there's a safe bill that has to do with horses, I think, too. So you got to watch out for that one. But yeah, the safe banking law versus the MORE COA.
Hold on really quick. This is so embarrassing. My Roomba just turned on. And it was just going to go around and start screaming. So I think, yes, I think banking is going to have, money talks. And I think banking is going to have more of an impact on the ability to deschedule and more of, unfortunately, the way our country works. I think that at this moment in time is slightly more important. The ability for us to be able to get big businesses and big banks behind the cannabis regulation.
I think they should have started creating an infrastructure for hemp before they started growing the hemp. We're exactly the opposite right now, where a lot of bast and herd are being thrown down and thrown out, where it could be used for so much industrial use. So hopefully we'll get the path done right, both sequentially, ordinally, and that kind of stuff.
We need more people, honestly, Gary. We need more people that are processing these hemp byproducts, because right now, when the farms are being planted, you have to make the decision, are you doing it for fiber? Or are you doing it for oil? And the conversation of where would we send the fiber, there's very minimum places for processing. And the places that do are not really paying that well, because the actual cost of the product processing is so high. And I think that has to do with the fact that there's just not a whole lot of competition at this point. So I think that potentially it could be, become a more profitable business if we could actually get more research into the processing of it. But right now we don't really have a ton of people growing that material either. So it's like, I guess it's like a chicken or an egg problem, because you have to turn it into something, but people have to be able to buy it and afford it. And, I think that that's probably one of the bigger issues right now, is that the cost of the actual material is so high, builders aren't buying it. So it's like, builders aren't buying it, so nobody will make it, because they're like, why would we make it? Nobody's buying it. And it's like, well, nobody's buying it because it's so expensive. And it's so expensive because there's not enough of you making it. And there's not enough of you making it because not enough of you are growing it.
That's why we got an MBA on staff over here.
I have no idea what's going on.
That's because you're an atheist. We'll go into that later on. But if you want to be part of the industry and actually move it forward, and not just say you're moving forward and not just criticize it on Twitter, you need to go ahead and get involved. And the way to get involved is to become a member of Suncoast Normal. You can go to suncoastnormal.org and sign up for your membership. Not only do you get this absolutely cool free gold pin, which really freaks people out at the supermarkets, but also you get a card. You're a card carrying member. You get a card, and you get a discount here over at Chillum, as a matter of fact.
And there's actually some great benefits just for signing up to be a member, just right off of our website. Did you know, Gary, that we have a social media aspect to our website where all of our members can communicate with one another? It's a really good way to share information and talk to each other and talk to us.
Yeah, and it also lets us know where all the trolls live, so we can go to their house and shoot their dog.
No dog shooting.
Anyone's dog.
Yeah, no, well, I'm a cat person, so
You would be a cat person, Gary.
We got 7 right now. That's another discussion for another time.
That's more than a cat person. I think you might just actually be a cat at that point.
Speaking of a great product, I got to tell you this. My daughter brought home this product. It's called Meow Joanna, and it's a catnip company that makes catnips in like 10 different strains, including Maui Meowie and a bunch of other ones. I don't know if there's actually any difference between the strains. It could just be a marketing ploy like Death Water, but I think that is so cool. You guys, some marketers actually rock when it comes to that kind of thing. Great marketers. And again, we're going to have a lot of different changes this year. I hope with this new session brings new hope for new conflict that will bring us to new laws, because I think conflict brings laws, and they started this conflict back in 1937 minus,
and some habitual line stepping.
And habitual lines now. Exactly right.
There you go. All right, guys. Thank you very much. It's I guess the rotation's over.